The prophet Isaiah said, "Look to the rock from which you were hewn, the quarry from which you were dug." Most of us, if we look to where we've come from, we'd have to stand here tonight and say America's been mighty good to us. Most of us are living better than we ever dreamed that we would ever live when we were little kids growing up. And that's true of most every one of us in this room. I sometimes have asked, how many of you are living better than you ever thought you would when you were a kid? And every hand in the room goes up. I sometimes ask, how many of you think your kids and grandkids will be living better than you? And people hold their hands down because they're not sure that's the case anymore. My parents were a part of what we often call the greatest generation. They deserve that title. These are folks who lived through the Great Depression and then went through a world war. And if any group of people ever had reason to be pessimistic and bitter and cynical and angry at the world, it would be them. They knew hardship. My mother was the oldest of 7 kids, grew up in a house with dirt floors, outdoor toilets, no electricity. My dad was one of those guys that didn't get to finish high school. In fact, I was the first male in my entire family lineage to even graduate high school, much less go into college. No male upstream from me ever had gotten that far in education. In fact, my dad used to tell me, "Son, don't look too far up that family tree. There's stuff up there you don't need to see." I looked just a little ways and I thought, boy, he's right. There's stuff up there I don't need to know. But my parents, coming through the hardships they did not live so they would have conveniences for themselves. They lived so that my sister and I would have a better life than they ever could have imagined. They lived their lives with the hope that we'd get more education, live better. My dad worked 2 jobs. He was a fireman. On his days off from the fire department, he worked on cars and car generators. He got grimy grit on his hands every single day. And no matter how hard he scrubbed, to the day he died, he never quite got it off. It just wore into him. I grew up in a family where the only soap we had in our house was lava soap. You in Texas know what that means. That means I was in college before I found out it's not supposed to hurt when you take a shower. Today, ladies go to the spa and they pay good money to have an exfoliation. Bar of lava will do the same thing. It's just not as much fun. My dad worked those 2 jobs and still barely paid the rent on the little rent house in Hope, Arkansas, where we lived on 2nd Street. But they always instilled in me that, son, you don't have any choice about where you started in this life, but you have all the choice in the world about where you end up. Because this is the United States of America. And in this country, nobody can tell you you have to stop where you started. If I was born in most nations of the world, I'd never live but a few miles from where I was born. I'd never have much more of an income than whatever my parents had when I was born. Whatever diseases they had, I'd probably have and maybe die with. I wouldn't have a whole lot more food than what I had in front of me that day, and some days I wouldn't have that. Whatever job I ended up with would be the job that was there in front of me, and it'd probably be basically just a job to keep me surviving and have enough water to drink and enough food to keep me sustained. But in this country, no matter where you started, you have the opportunity to make any choice you want. And folks, if we ever lose the basic understanding of what makes America a great country, we can end up being like people that we look at and say, boy, aren't we glad that we live here. Well, what makes us a great country is not our government. It's the fact that we've always been a people who believe that our strength came not from standing on our feet, but being on our knees and recognizing that by the providence of God, we are a country. And then recognizing that we have an amazing responsibility to each other and to the rest of the world to be, as John Winthrop called us, a city on a hill, like a shining light. And that's why tonight this election is not just about the politics of Republican and Democrat, the left and the right, the liberal and the conservative. And it's not just about the politics of who Washington thinks you ought to vote for. It is the politics of principle. It is the depth of your conviction. It is what you believe would make this a great and strong country once again. And it's being able to say that when I go and vote, I'm not going to vote because somebody else votes this way. I'm not going to vote because that's the way they voted elsewhere. I'm going to vote because I believe a candidate ought to represent my views, my values, my convictions, my principles. And I will vote to make a statement to America. I will vote to make a statement to my fellow Texans. I will vote to make a statement for the future, not the past. I don't know that any person running for office has ever depended so on a single state as I'm depending on the people of Texas. But I believe this. Texas is an awfully big state. It's going to make a big noise come March the 4th. And let me tell you what I'm hoping for. All those talking heads who have had so much to say about what you were going to do, I'd love to see them speechless the night of March the 4th, trying to figure out I want to see them speechless March the 4th, trying to figure out why you didn't do what they said you were going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few days, I want not only for you to commit to go out and vote for me, but to get friends, relatives, and people you work with and neighbors to do the same. We had a guy in Wisconsin who made 1,000 telephone calls to get people to go vote. 1,000 calls. Maybe you'd do 100. Maybe you'd knock on some doors. And if you find somebody and they'll agree to go vote for me, don't let them stay home. You make sure they get out and vote. Now, if you find somebody that's not going to vote for me, you tell them the election has been canceled. They don't need to go out. We don't want those people out there. They're dangerous. You know something? I still am amazed over the past 14 months of this process of running for president. Because I remember when I was an 8-year-old kid, my dad said, Governor of Arkansas is going to come down to Hope. He's going to make a speech and dedicate a lake. I'm going to take you down there to hear him talk. Because, son, you may live your whole life and you may never meet a governor in person. Little did he know that his boy that he was going to take to see a governor would, for 10.5 years, serve as the 44th governor of the state of Arkansas. And folks, I promise you it never occurred to him that one day I'd be standing in Plano, Texas, and believing that if you get out and help me win this state, I would be on my way to becoming the 44th President of the United States of America. Thank you, folks. God bless you. Thank you.